Welcome to this presentation, which is about Xiaomi company as a case study, and we are going to talk about their brave attempt, which was ended with a complete failure in the Brazilian market. In the second quarter of 2021, Xiaomi surpassed Apple in terms of global smartphone shipments and ranked the second after Samsung, with almost 17% of the total market share. So this results is maybe conclusion of difficulties, of failures, of great experiences.
The table of content looks like followed. We will start with a brief introduction to Xiaomi and the case, which will be followed by the strategic issues and the strategic concepts, and we will end with the implications. Starting off with the introduction, Omran will provide you with a brief explanation of Xiaomi and the case.
Xiaomi was officially established in April 2010 with a core business of mobile phones, smart hardwares, and IoT platforms. With a slogan of Born Forever and two characteristics of low price and high cost performance, we saw that the company's market share in terms of smartphone segment ranked the second globally in the second quarter 2021. Xiaomi products are present in more than 100 countries and regions around the world. With the mentality of making the world's best phones at half the price so that everyone can afford them, Xiaomi could internationalize and be one of the biggest phone makers all over the world.
Moving on to the strategic issues, Ryan and Austin will provide you with two strategic issues which they will explain.
In 2015, Xiaomi tried to expand abroad while entering the Brazilian market. They were expecting high return on sales, but the final result wasn't the one expected. They failed. In fact, Brazil has a strict trade policies to protect economy within the country, known as the Brazilian cost, which is basically an important taxes for foreign companies that do not produce locally. To solve this issue, a joint venture plan has been settled between China and Brazil to accelerate the deployment of technology in the country. So there is two main strategic issues that we found out. The first one is the inability to transfer advantages that I'm going to talk about, and later we are going to speak about the inability to create value. In fact, in China, 1/4 of the smartphones are bought online, but that's not the case in Brazil and most countries in the world, by the way. They prefer to purchase smartphones physically, in shops or retailers, than online. Moreover, and more importantly, even if Brazil is the fourth largest market in terms of smartphones, the consumers there were buying mainly high good value. Xiaomi is basically a low-end smartphone producer for them, with less features than the smartphones usually purchased by the Brazilian consumer, such as Samsung or LG. It was the case of the Redmi 2, the first product launched by the company in Brazil. The lack of desired functions just disgusted and frustrated most of the buyers.
Just following on from Rayan's point about the inability to transfer Xiaomi's advantages, I'll now discuss their failure to create value in the Brazilian market. So in the Chinese market, Xiaomi had remarkable software. Their hardware was, top of the range, and their internet services as well in China were also top of the range. However, they were unable to provide these advantages to their Brazilian customers. Xiaomi also had a strong emphasis on customer engagement, and they had them involved with live feedback that was incorporated into their mobile devices. The popularity of their devices in China grew through the Chinese microblogging site called Weibo that currently has 430 million plus users. However, they obviously couldn't do this in Brazil because Weibo is not in Brazil. Also, the CEO of Xiaomi is noted as saying that the company is just for fans, which kind of implies that the company was driven by user engagement with the products. So as previously mentioned, Xiaomi relied heavily on its users engaging with the company, and they were able to spread their brand through their high brand awareness that existed in China and in previous markets. Their poor brand awareness in Brazil meant that any users of the phones could not perceive the value in the same way that a Chinese customer was able to perceive the value of the products. Features that users in China enjoyed were also not the same as in Brazil, with one of the main preferred features of mobile phones in Brazil being a dual chip SIM card slot, which Xiaomi didn't offer with their Redmi phones that were available in Brazil. And even though Xiaomi's prices were quite low, they weren't enough to entice Brazilian users. All in all, the reasons for failure for Xiaomi, we can conclude, were that they weren't able to transfer their core advantages of their products, and they might need to rethink their international strategic approach towards other markets for any future endeavors that they have.
Moving on to the strategic concepts, Leonard will tell you something about the Uppsala model, and I will tell you something more about the generic country attractiveness framework.
The Uppsala model is a model for firms that are looking to make sales across the border. According to this model, the best strategy to internationalize is to do it slowly and steadily. It recommends starting the internationalization process by exporting. The sales can be made by independent sales representatives in a foreign country. It is very important what country is chosen to export to. The optimal foreign country uses the same language and has a similar political system. The firm should focus on the lessons they learn from exporting, as it can be used in future international activities. Now the firm can take it to the next step, which is creating sales subsidiaries. Again, the firm should be aware of the experience they gain by doing this next step. The last step of the internationalization process is to build manufacturing subsidiaries in the foreign countries. The model is built so that every next step increases the commitment in the foreign market. By increasing commitment, the process of gaining experience becomes faster and faster. So the model recommends internationalizing firms to take it one step at a time, instead of rushing into a market and expecting to be successful. In their internationalization process, Xiaomi followed the Uppsala model and started by exporting to Hong Kong and Taiwan in 2013. Both are Chinese-speaking countries and have a similar government. To export their products, they work together with local distributors, which greatly reduced the barriers to enter the market. After this became a success, they entered Southeast Asian countries. Although none of these countries spoke Chinese, the political and administrative distance between the countries were relatively small. First they only did direct exports, later added indirect exports, and eventually built sales subsidiaries. In 2017, they opened their first foreign manufacturing subsidiary in Indonesia, and later built another two in India. Their internationalization process is compliant with the Uppsala model, as they carefully selected markets to enter and steadily followed the modes of operation provided by the Uppsala model.
When we use the generic country's attractiveness framework, we can see the reasons for Xiaomi for entering the Brazilian market through the market and industry opportunities. But the country risks should have made Xiaomi considering whether it was worth it to enter the Brazilian market. When we take a look at the risks of Brazil for a firm like Xiaomi, we can come to the conclusion that the main cause of the failure was the lack of understanding of the local market. The distance is huge between Brazil and China in culture, but also political and operational. There are several political barriers for Chinese firms to conquer, and Brazil has high import taxes and strict trade policies in place to protect its domestic electronics industries. Moreover, Brazil has a negative economic growth and once collapsed. The most direct effect of economic collapse is the currency devaluation. Xiaomi can set a price of a particular phone at 1,000, after which the phone might be only worth 500 tomorrow. Moving on to the market opportunities, we get the reason of Xiaomi for entering Brazil. Brazil has a demographic advantage because the nation is the largest in South America. According to the forecast of the Brazilian telecommunication authorities, the average annual growth rate of the telecommunication market will be as high as 9%. In 2023, the revenue of the domestic telecommunication service market in Brazil is expected to exceed US $50 billion. As one of the 4 BRIC countries and the world top 10 economies, Brazil has a great advantage. Also, the industry opportunities explain the reason of Xiaomi for entering Brazil. With relative complete infrastructure and a large smartphone audience, Brazil is one of the major telecom markets. In 2019, the bindings for telecommunication companies were loosened, which enhanced their competitiveness. Moreover, the Brazilian government has launched economic reforms to attract foreign capital from foreign investors. Then we come to the managerial implication, and Omram will explain these implications to you.
By the end of this case, we can have some lessons could be learned from Xiaomi's internationalization process and their failure in Brazil. First, companies should understand their local markets. It's a homework, and they should do this homework and try not to avoid it. So it's a key important issue to understand the local markets. Then the decision makers must take all kinds of risks into consideration when they are enter to new markets. Firms can transfer advantage when all critical resources are available in the new country. And finally, determine the suitable marketing channel and sales tactics for each local market would be a principal factor to succeed in this country.
And this was our presentation of Group 7D. We hope you liked it. If you still have any questions about our presentations, you can, of course, ask them via email or in class or whatever. Thank you.